Hey everybody! So IndieWeen's been going pretty well so far. We've picked up a lot of fun games and we're not even to the halfway mark of a full-price AAA title. So let's pump the brakes on the hardcore nightmare fuel for a moment and do some more lighthearted spookies while we're at it. Today's indie horror game comes from EU-based studio Baroque Decay. I believe they're mostly in Spain, but they've got a few other dudes dotted across the continent. Some of you might remember them from last year's Halloween video where I covered a favorite of mine that they did, the Count Lucanor. Yuppie Psycho is very much a continuation of all the major elements of the Count Lucanor. It's an adventure horror game with a strong suit and pixel art and a healthy portion of humor dolloped on top of the horror. You play as one Brian Pasternack, a young man who got a job from the largest mega corporation in the city out of the blue with little to no explanation as to what he's being offered a job for, and now must survive a very stressful first day at work. This first day includes zombies, office supply monsters, and annoying co-workers. So like I said earlier, Yuppie Psycho is very much adventure horror like Count Lucanor before it. Despite being hired as a witch hunter, Brian is not really a master of destroying the unholy or even remotely athletic, so most of your tasks will rely on your wits or simply being lucky and in the right place at the right time. You'll be collecting a lot of things to use with other things in order to progress and use that one thing which will advance the plot. The fun comes from all the aha moments you have exploring the world around you and figuring out how to do the thing. Baroque Decay is definitely sticking to its strong suit based on the Count Lucanor, now Yuppie Psycho. However, there are boss fights, so to speak. These aren't so much about rushing down a big scary enemy's health bar with violence and are more about using the environment to get the big scary thing away from you or to escape from the big scary thing using stealth in an area where you can't just simply run in the other direction from the big scary thing. These are pretty good, but sometimes they get a little tedious if you die more than once to them, as there's only really one way to do each. If you played the Count Lucanor before this game, you'll be familiar with how Yuppie Psycho does its primary mechanics, saving and light management, while you're exploring the Sintracorp Tower. For those of you that didn't play Lucanor, your saves are limited, and you'll need to find an expendable item in order to make saves. In Yuppie Psycho, they're called witch paper. Strange pieces of paper that bear the mark of the witch that's taken over the company, which you'll need to use to slam your face into the scanner portion of a copy machine that your coworker just put his butt cheeks against in order to make a photocopy of your soul, which will act as a backup point in the event of your mortal body dying. This kind of reminds me of the saves in Penumbra a bit, how they apparently sucked in a part of you to make a copy of yourself. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Before you can save though, you'll need to make sure the copy machine you want to use is in working order, which requires another rare resource, printer ink. This adds a new layer of strategy to where and when you want to make your save, since printer ink is in very limited supply and you very well might need it for a major boss fight later on if you're not so good at stealth. Copy machines are also not always in a safe spot, so you have to weigh the convenience of a save point near a certain area against if it's a good idea to have your last save be in an area where enemies are actively patrolling. Then there's light sources. Your primary means of illuminating dark areas is a flashlight you'll find about a quarter way in, and it works just like every other flashlight you'll find in a horror game. It illuminates a decent cone of vision, but it eats batteries like no tomorrow. If anything, it kinda just makes me appreciate the flashlight and cry of fear even more. Aside from that, you get glow sticks which act just like candles did in the Count Lucanor, which have their own benefits since they don't suck up any battery life, and you can put them down on the floor to help mark certain places. But the range of light is so low that you can barely see in front of yourself while you're holding them. You can get your flashlight upgraded to have a larger cone of light, and you can even find a special lantern that, while it does suck up batteries nearly twice as fast as your flashlight, it will illuminate a huge area in a full circle around you while you use it. So on top of managing your saves and your light sources, you'll also have to manage food and craftables. Healing items are straightforward at first. You've got an assortment of run-of-the-mill snack foods, and you might even find a vending machine in the office or two that you can use your hard-earned credits on. But also, just about every healing item in the game can either be crafted on your own in the company canteen, or if you can just find them laying around inside of filing cabinets. Those are probably safe to eat, right? Yeah. If candy bars hidden among the quarterlies aren't your thing though, there's that perfectly good coffee maker and panini press in the company canteen, and if you find the right items, you can make all sorts of foods that'll heal a lot more health. No matter what though, you're gonna find yourself rifling through every last filing cabinet and pile of papers you see, and emptying the entire water cooler barrel in the office in full view of your coworkers, because you're going to need every last drop of coffee and every package of instant noodles you can get if you want to get past the dot matrix. With all this being said, Yuppie Psycho is very engaging visually and it's an interesting game, but I'd be missed if I didn't address the fact that Yuppie Psycho is very much a buy the Prima Games book kind of game in an age where walkthrough books are long gone. There's a ton of stuff that you simply wouldn't know to do unless you either brute force every prompt on every floor after everything happens, and even then you might not find all the best stuff to get the job done in certain scenarios. For example, earlier in the game, your task was figuring out what the heck happened to the Sintra family over in the family graveyard over on floor 8, and you'll eventually meet the Goblin, who speaks Malkavian and tells you that he can make magic contracts if you find him barcodes. But there's no real leads on where or how you get the barcodes or what these contracts do. What you're supposed to do is go back down to the canteen floor where in the beginning of the game some dude was eating an entire box of cereal, nab the empty box, bring it to the Goblin, and that'll net you a special contract that lets you ignore toxic gas everywhere for the price of 2 of your witch papers. Don't worry about looting the saves though, you can just buy more witch papers from the Goblin by giving him a slice of cheese. With this contract you go down to the 4th floor, which you were in earlier to try and make a friend, and now you'll be led to a new challenge area and a boss fight that lets you discover a key card of the guy that came before you, which when you go back to your own office, you'll wander around in a corrupted version of cyberspace for about 5 minutes until a corrupted version of the Sintrabot will give you a cryptic clue to find a secret office where the key is hidden, and then you can open the gate to the family graveyard on floor 8, and God forbid you forgot to activate all the shrines before going in. That's elaborate enough, but you'd eventually figure it out over a few hours. This isn't bringing up the true level of good old-fashioned adventure game BS that Yuppie Psycho unfortunately indulges in, where you're going to need a walkthrough unless you want to miss out on all the major parts of the game. Later in the story, something bad will happen to all of your friends and you'll need to save them. Now, it's hard enough finding where most of them are, and there's a good chance you won't be able to save your main friend unless you've got an iron will and know to do the other elaborate series of tasks that aren't pointed out anywhere in the game in order to get the water breathing contract from the Goblin. But unless you did another series of seemingly meaningless tasks in order to unlock a shortcut to an early game area from your office, which you probably written off since you thought you were done in that area, it won't be possible to save all your friends and get the good ending. To make matters worse, there's a high likelihood that you'll be locked out of being able to unlock that shortcut unless you knew beforehand that you needed to do it much earlier in the game. You see, during the previously mentioned section of game with the dot matrix printer monster, you'll need to go back to that area to collect a few things after the fight. Notably, one of the cardboard boxes you'll need to stack up in order to make that shortcut back to floor 7 to save all your friends. The problem herein lies that unless you knew ahead of time that you needed to backtrack to that area, it's impossible to go back there unless you set it up in advance. There's a switch that you'll need to hit early in that level to continue deeper into the hive, but you'll need to go back and unhit that switch or else the entire area becomes inaccessible after the boss fight and you won't be able to get the collectibles in there, including for a while the box you needed to unlock the shortcut later in the game. Now I ask you, how the heck would you have known literally any of that information I just ranted about for about 2.5 minutes unless you were not only reading a walkthrough as you played, but you had also read ahead to the end of that walkthrough to know that you need to do those things ahead of time. Bonus points for how in an attempt to offset the oversight about making that one area inaccessible, they moved some of the things around to new places so that you'd be able to get them after the Dark Matrix fight. But now that means that if you're reading an older version of the walkthrough that hasn't been updated since the game's initial release, you'll be completely lost. The one saving grace here comes from the save system. Since saves cost resources, they never get overwritten. You can go back and load any save that you've made since first booting up the game, so you don't have to go all the way to the beginning once you've realized you missed a seemingly inconsequential task that locks you out of the good ending. Okay, I think that's enough ranting for the moment. In the looks department, Baroque Decay took the if it ain't broke, don't fix it route and went for the same aesthetic as the Count Lucanor in the overworld. It's 8-bit pixel art that's a little more than what you'd expect in an NES game, but it's less than you get from a Super Nintendo game. It does a good job of portraying everything it needs to clearly without being too chunky, and that's okay with me. That's not what we're here for. If you remember anything about Baroque Decay's previous title and the canceled project they had, it's their pixel art cutscenes. Yuppie Psychos are the best they've done yet, and that's really saying something. What's even better now is that they've amped up the animations, which really put all the pixel art over the top. If there's one reason to complete this game and get the good ending, it's so you can indulge in all of these cutscenes. And as a nice cherry on top, Yuppie Psycho also has a much larger soundtrack than the Count Lucanor did, and some of these tunes just pop in your ears. I can't really play them for the usual reasons involving copyright and who knows what exactly is fed into the Content ID system these days, but again, you can listen to all these tunes in your extras menu, or if you really like them, you can just buy the soundtrack on its own through Steam. Alright, so that's enough ranting about the gameplay and talking about the looks. Let's get into them spookies. Yuppie Psycho is a hyperbolic take on the idea of a toxic workplace. There's entire rooms where faceless workers just mill about in near darkness where apparently if they stop moving, they will literally die. Most of the offices in general are poorly lit, and you'll do better to avoid anyone who isn't a main character. Most of the office drones are gibbering monsters that will damage you if you get too close to them. One of your coworkers has a stupid alter ego he uses to pull pranks on you. Your boss's office is decrepit and reeks of death because no one's actually been there in years. And you'll have to participate in mandatory team building exercises with your coworkers. Yikes. And then there are the actual monsters, the so-called Children of the Witch, which were various co-workers and other assets of an office that were human and normal once upon a time. Your first real encounter with them is going to be in accounting, where this little lad over here forces you to use the guy you are trying to rescue as human bait in order for you yourself to get out alive. There's more stuff like this out there, like that chimera in the office archives, the literal graveyard on the 8th floor filled with whatever those things are, and the human resources employees are all acid-spitting monsters serving a giant poisonous mouth in the wall. In order to get updates on your task of killing the witch, you have to go to the vaporwave dimension inside of your computer, and there's also a bunch of other stuff that get weird too, but I don't want to get too into it here because we're not in spoilers yet. Lastly, there's the Video Mysterio Club. Your odd, but less so than everyone else here, coworker Miss Sosa runs a horror movie club out of the archives with her friend, the item vendor, and they make their own little horror movies while they're at it. Now, I've said before that I'm not a big fan of having lots of unfulfilling rewards for collecting a ton of stuff, but the Video Mysterio tapes are each a little reward in and of themselves, so I like it. There is an achievement for collecting them all and talking to Sosa towards the end of the game, provided that you did all those little things that allow you to save all of your friends leading up to the end game, but that's just the icing on the cake. These videos are likely just the devs at Baroque Decay goofing around with a camcorder in their spare time, but they add flavor to the world of Yuppie Psycho beyond the initial, you live in a world where the quality of your life is based on your standing in a megacorp, and then someone went and added evil magic into the mix. But more on that in the story section. There's also a few tapes you might find that aren't the makings of a few office drones wanting to make horror movies, but might actually be the real deal. Alright, now before we get into the story, let's give some indie love to our sponsor. IndieWeen is sponsored by the Kickstarter for Acheron, a tabletop RPG inspired by the likes of Call of Cthulhu, SCP, and Dishonored. Acheron focuses on a balance between gameplay and roleplay by eschewing class, unique character races, and by having a die-hard system that cripples your characters instead of outright killing them. Best of all is that Acheron is going to be an all-inclusive core book. No more scrounging around for the core book plus the monster manual, a DM guide, and that other book if you want to roll as one of the cool classes. Nope, Acheron isn't about that. Check out Acheron on their Kickstarter page and maybe send a little indie love their way if it looks like it's your thing. So, Yuppie Psycho's premise is that it's in a world where everyone's standing in that world is based upon their class of citizenship, which is in turn something that can be made or broken by the favor of one of the mega corporations in a hyperbolic version of salaryman culture. As a result of this, hardly anyone that lives in the capital city bats an eye at all the insane stuff going on the various floors of the Sintracorp building, because if that's what they gotta do to keep themselves in good standing with Sintracorp and keep their standing in society, that's what they gotta do. Our protagonist, Brian Pasternack, is from a lower echelon of citizenship out in the suburbs, and therefore all of this is shocking to him. It was already off-putting enough that after he got his job offer out of the blue despite not taking any of those entrance exams he needed to take, then that his job description was written in meter-tall letters of blood on the CEO office's walls, he's thinking all of this is a little weird. Not to mention that while he's new to the office lifestyle, he finds it a little odd that he has to enter the vaporwave dimension to talk to an AI that's overseeing his mission to kill this witch. Okay, spoiler time. You know what to do. Okay, go. So Brian Pasternack is the latest in the line of schmoes hired to try and deal with the witch that's been getting her claws deeper and deeper into this company for years now. None of these people have been successful, obviously. He learns through bits and pieces here and there that the original Sintra family had made some sort of pact with the witch that made the company successful, but at the cost of the family's eventual demise in one way or another after the disappearance of their daughter, Ray. Since the family's downfall, Sintranet, an AI that was based off a scrapped Android program, has been seeking out someone that can undo what the witch has done. The Sintracorp used to be big into androids, robotics, and all that sort of bleeding sci-fi level tech, but that all got canned a while back in a very fishy manner, leading some to believe that it was the product of sabotage. Along the way, Brian gets his hands on one of the few Sintra family photos in existence, which includes a second child which has never been mentioned anywhere in the Sintracorp history. This prompts him to go and check out the family graveyard to see what's up, and on the way he learns the fate of the other witch hunters who tried before him. They died. He gets into the family tomb and discovers that Ray Sintra, despite being declared dead and given a funeral, has no body inside of her casket, just a couple bells. If he remembers to give a few credits to several shrines scattered across the office building, he'll meet the spirit form of one of the previous hunters that explains to him that once upon the time, the Sintras were a mildly successful couple of business people that weren't able to have children. They spent their savings on a black market baby, Domori, who, aside from looking like Inuyasha's little sister, Domori is a magical being that so long as the Sintras keep her happy, Domori will bring them great fortune. This causes them not only to transform their business prospects into something glorious that literally transforms their house into a giant skyscraper housing the biggest business in all of the capital, but also brings them the luck to have their own natural-born child, Ray. Ray and Domori are the best of friends until something happens to Ray and she goes missing. In Domori's anguish, the company's stock goes into freefall and a lot of awful stuff starts happening around the building. In desperation, the Sintras burn Domori to try and get rid of her. That doesn't quite work though, as decades later they're still hiring witch hunters. Just as Brian is about to head back to Sintranet and act on his newfound knowledge about who the witch really might be, he's dragged off by one of his office mates to the birthday party of another office mate whom he doesn't particularly like, as Hugo's actively been trying to hinder or even kill him throughout the whole game. Now, just as a fair warning, the information from this point on is kind of hard to corroborate since it's all across multiple endings, but Hugo isn't overtly in league with the witch. However, he is just going along with the flow because it directly benefits him, and he's learned just enough to make sure that the witch never targets him. He was originally one of the lowest classes in society, but used the identity of a worker that was killed by one of the witch's children to ascend the ranks of the company, throwing people to the witch as they got in his way. At his birthday party, Hugo gets Brian to out himself as the witch hunter, and all hell literally breaks loose. Brian gets saved by his union rep, and that starts the process of the endgame. In what I think is the good ending, Brian goes about saving all of his co-workers that he made friends with, and then goes to Satan's art gallery where he finds the original head of the original Sintra android, which he uses to complete an android in the IT guy's office. Turns out that the first android is some sort of copy of Ray Sintra's mind, and now she's alive again, sorta, and also has all the knowledge of Sintracorp's database to boot. Ray breaks the MacGuffin dagger that you were supposed to grab before doing this, and the two of you go off to confront Domori. After a prolonged water level that isn't so bad if you were reading the walkthrough and knew to get the water breathing contract despite there literally being no water to breathe in before this point in the game, it turns out that at some point Domori was feeling left out thanks to a magical boundary she had to be within, and the snake thing around her neck convinced her to swap bodies with Ray so that she could go out and play, which is a thing she can do apparently. Something happens to Domori while she swapped bodies with Ray, and she disappears. Something else happens though, and somehow Domori was trapped in crystal inside of Ray's body, deep within the building, and the snake around her neck was allowed to reign free without Domori to keep him in check. The Sintras don't know about any of this, including the body swap, and they accidentally burn Ray inside of Domori's body, thinking that it's Domori causing all this nasty stuff, including making Ray go missing. Lucky for everyone involved though, the original Sintra robot was a copy of Ray's mind, Soma style, so when Brian reassembles the Sintra bot, he essentially has Ray, for all intents and purposes, at his side. Sintra Ray is able to help Brian confront the snake and free Domori and Ray's original child body. Domori, Brian, and Sintra Ray go to confront Sintracorp's new CEO, Hugo, and they use a clause in the company bylaws to install Domore as the CEO of Sintracorp. Brian says hi to his friends, and then he has a nice time on the roof. The end. You don't even have to do half of this. If you want, you can just have a chat with Hugo and he'll tell you about all that rank ascending stuff and then fire you, and you can just leave the building without doing any of the endgame stuff. Heck, if you really want to, you can pull a Far Cry 4 and skip the entire game by refusing to sign the employment contract and noping right out of the building. Whew. Okay, so I know this was a lot to take in, but also take it all with a big grain of salt because while I did try to fact check my playthroughs and other information as best I could, the wikis and even the TV tropes page on Yuppie Psycho are sparsely populated, and you might be aware that some of this stuff is crazy ambiguous and about as clear as a brick wall. But wait, there's more! Recently, Baroque Decay announced that they're going to release a new version of Yuppie Psycho called Yuppie Psycho Executive Edition that, by their own blurbs, will include 3 more hours of content, 3 new bosses, new endings, more bonding with your office buddies, new lore, and so on. This is slated to come out October the 29th, and before you hold off on buying Yuppie Psycho, it's going to cost exactly the same as the base game does, and if you've already bought the base game or just want to buy it right now, your base game is going to automatically get upgraded to the Executive Edition for free. Now, despite all of this, warts and all, I still give Yuppie Psycho my recommendation based on its art, the silly spookies, and its interesting world. On top of that, it's about to get a crap ton of new content for free. Yuppie Psycho is $16.66 on your favorite game storefront and is available for PC, Mac, Linux, and all major consoles. And if that's a little much for you, but you still want that office space horror experience, I'd suggest picking up Suits on Steam for 99 cents and then wishlisting Yuppie Psycho and waiting for the sale. Actually, just buy Suits anyway because it's a classic, and it's also got a sequel that should be released a few days ago based on when this video is going to go live. I don't have time to make a video on Suits, but it's definitely worth your time. That brings us to a minimum total of $19.65 if you were lucky enough to get Close to the Sun for free, got Cry of Fear for free since it is free, paid the minimum amount to experience all of the Faith trilogy, and then paid regular price for Yuppie Psycho and Suits. If you're paying full price for everything, say if you weren't able to grab the Close to the Sun game for free, you're still at a grand total of 7 games for $42.65. We are killing it versus a full price AAA game right now. Up next, we're gonna get really weird with Golden Light, and after that I might take a nap or something because I've been putting out a video a week for 5 weeks straight now. Be sure to subscribe and ring that stupid bell if you want your subscription to do what it's supposed to do in the first place, and then be sure to drop by on weekends where I'm streaming Kenshi on Saturdays and Immersive Sims on Sundays. If you want to help me make more videos and get early access to new videos, plus special roles in the Discord, plus behind the scenes updates, plus 4K cat videos, mosey on over to patreon.com/charlatanwonder where you can get all of that stuff for less than the price of one Whopper. If you can or won't, that's cool. I'm still gonna be making these videos as best I can and as fast as I can. Special $10 patron shoutouts to Olisanera, Jared G, Tor H, Richard H, Graham R, Spectate, Niles D, Yannick Z, Memesh, Schlingding, Jacob M, Dead Negator, Karlski, Chili Moonbuns, OMG, Ponies, Bam Bam, Toxico, Shredded Paper Plate, McFluffers, and French Toast, as well as a big hello and welcome and thank you to new patrons Jared G, Macedon97, Alejandro J, Tomeboy, and LaserFox21. In the meantime, everyone please stay safe, stay indoors, wear your mask when you need to go out, wash your hands, and please enjoy this cat video. I can woke him up. Here, bother you, even though this camera doesn't pick up this light very well. Let's bother him in better light. Oh, look at this handsome lad. How are you today, sir? Any moment to think about that one? Would a scritch increase the quality of your day? I'm gonna screech it. Ooh, a screechy boy. Why are you putting your paws in my hand? You being silly again? Okay, I'll just let you have your nap. Oh, you're getting up now? You gotta go bother mommy and scream for snacks. Yep, he's off. Assuming a snack begging position. God, when I zoom in, it's all shaky.